All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome
Hello?
to another live. My goodness, we're really kind of rolling in with this. It's been a lot of fun, right,
Yeah,
Jen?
for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying
we've we
the time.
have, and it's been an interesting space for us to kind of play around in a little bit,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
also really just get to be ourselves. So, um, today we're kicking off the Our Brave Story series, which is so exciting and something Jen and I have talked about for a while now, and had sort of different variations of what that could look like. We also thought, you know what, we sort of jumped in first LinkedIn Live series, and now Facebook Live. Without really introducing ourselves and
Yeah, yeah.
what we do and what we share with the world. So thought we'd go back and start at the beginning a little bit today, um, but also as a piece of that, with this series, this Our Brave Stories piece, this is where we definitely want to bring others into the conversation to be able to share their stories. So for us, this is really the first putting our toe in the water by doing the work first and
Mhm.
sharing what this can kind of look like and then being able to share that space with others. So just really excited to kind of share what that is and what that looks like for Jalen Consulting Group, and then invite others to share with us as well. So I will just first and foremost, I'm going to pass it over to Jen because really, as much as I play such a big role in JLCG, and I recognize that and all of that, this really started with you. And I'm grateful to be here with you because of that. Oh, we have someone saying hello. Hi.
Hello.
A LinkedIn user. It doesn't say who. I'm so sad, but welcome, and so glad to have folks with us here today, and also anyone who's coming in for the recording afterwards. Just welcome and glad you're here. So, so with that, we're kind of structuring this one to storytell and practice that storytelling that we talked about a couple weeks ago, but also to kind of help guide through, where people are at, what they're sharing with this world, and what that looks like for the future. So, our first sort of part of that question is, we're talking about so Jalen Consulting. What we're really talking about here is this brave human leadership. Hey, Dina. Sorry. So we're talking about brave human leadership. So Jen, where did brave human leadership start?
Oof. Um, how far back are we going here?
Yeah, right.
Um,
True.
so let me kind of give a little bit of a backdrop first to go into this so that it makes sense. Because it may or may not make sense how I share this, but I want this to kind of have a starting point. So I'm going to give you this. By as many of you might know, and if you don't, my master's degree is in sports and human performance psychology. And I have worked with professional athletes, I've worked with little kids, I've worked with everything in between. And what I found to be true was that it was all the same stuff. And by that I mean it was about I call it how we human. It
Mm,
was about how we show up every day. It was about confidence. It was about perfectionism. It was about how we view failure. All of these different things that come up in a given day. You don't have to be an athlete to actually have these things that you're carrying with you every day that you struggle with, or maybe you're really good at, or
mhm.
somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
And so in my in my life as a sports psychology consultant with professional teams, one of the things that I did was would help athletes come up with a mantra. And usually one team in particular, I used to do this specifically prior to game. And they would we would I would show up with on a piece of paper. It was just printed out on a piece of paper, and it was a 5-word mantra, whatever it was for that day, and I would change it up every day. And I put it on the wall right before they left the locker room to go out onto the field. And I would watch them as they walked by and they'd high five it on their way out. the pitchers on the team, it was a softball team, would write it on their arms.
Mm.
And I realized that there was something to this, that there was a centering moment. There was a lifeline, so to speak. It was something to focus on. It was something to remember throughout the game, whether or not they were playing well or not, right? And so what I realized from that was there are ways that we can train our minds and therefore our bodies to respond to our minds that I think a lot of times we don't tap into enough. And so I kind of went down this whole, rabbit hole, so to speak, of really understanding the psychological sides of how we talk to ourselves and that inner chatter, we call it in the sports psychology world, and what that looks like when we show up well and what it's looking like when we're not. And there was a distinct difference. And as I brought that into the corporate world, it worked. It was great. I started to do this whole, I can't to I did. It was a 5 C's, all of these different things that I worked on and brought as really more inspirational, motivational to companies. People ate it up. They loved it. It was great. And then I started to see how it went a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working with companies from a standpoint of, there's a lot going on around us, right? So we can conquer that inner chatter. We can find ways to do that. But what happens when the outside world starts to crumble around us?
Mm.
And what happens if we're in a toxic work environment? What happens if we have a leader who really doesn't lead? And I saw that in the sports world as well, right? I mean, that shows up on teams often.
Yep.
And so I started to study that and I started to pay attention to that. And I thought, okay, so what if we could teach people how to create that culture and to create leaders who can sustain that culture that you want, right? And so one night, as it happens, I was literally asleep and I woke up in the middle of the night and I wrote down, I used to have a piece of paper and a pen next to my bed, literally, not even like my phone. It was a piece of paper and a pen.
Yeah, right.
I was old school. And I wrote down the word brave.
Mm.
And I remember making notes next to the letters. And I think I wrote down like 4 of the 5. And I literally went back to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I didn't remember doing that. It was literally on my bedside. I'm like, what is this? This is genius. This is amazing. Where did this come from? And I realized it was a subconscious moment of my brain tapping into all of those things that I have been talking about every single day, because that's how the brain works, right? So it was kind of like watching what I'm studying and what I'm talking about in real life.
Right.
So from there, B.R.A.V.E became kind of a framework as, to which I would utilize that process. And then I started to get deeper into what is brave, what is, belonging, resilience, authenticity, vulnerability, empathy. As we were approaching, and this is pre-pandemic, approaching my last TEDx talk, which was in, interestingly enough, November of 2019. Few months
wild.
before the world fell apart, right? I had no idea, obviously. People are like, did you have a crystal ball? No, I did not. But I was studying loneliness in the workplace.
Mm.
And that TEDx talk was really about how community and connection will save us.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a few months later, we're being asked to purposefully disconnect, right? And to grow further apart. And I thought, ooh, this is not going to be good. And so I feel like that's really when this went into, high focus and high gear, because I knew that this is what is needed today. This is the only way that we can lead from here, is to lead in this way.
Absolutely. And the piece of that too, I mean, if you don't know Jen in 5 words, these 5 words, or any 5 of anything, you will definitely find that along the lines as we go through all these LinkedIn lives. But it's so incredibly important and powerful. And I'm so grateful to have even started to learn and really understand the impact of what that can be. Um, you talked about where this came from. There's always when you have entrepreneurs, when you have people who are creating things like this for the world, there it goes kind of back to that why, right? And what it really means to you. What does it mean to you, really and truly, to bring this into the world? Like, what is it that is so important to you about getting this message out and about sharing the way that we can change really the way we lead, whether it's in the corporate world or in our homes? Like, what is it about this that is so incredibly important to you that that this needs to be shared?
Um, it's so hard to put this into one thing, but I'm going to tell a quick story.
Yeah.
And it's a story that has been repeated over time. I've seen this come up in different spaces, different ages, different scenarios, but I want to tell this one story because I think it's so important to get it right early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every year I would speak up in the up north in Pennsylvania, way up in Williamsport, which is where the Little League World Series happens. And every year I would do this summer program called Pennsylvania Free Enterprise Week. And basically, it's a outstanding program for juniors and seniors in high school to come together to almost create their own kind of companies for that week, where there's a president and there's a board and there's all of these different roles that they play, and they get to learn how to speak, use their voice. They get to learn how business really works, how to create a product, how to be creative, how to work together as a team, how to meet deadlines. Then they have to do a pitch competition at the end. It's a phenomenal program. Even if you're not thinking about going into business, it's just to learn how to do these things. These are skills that are so critically important. So every year that I would do this, I would always have, at the end of my presentation, I would always have some, kids lined up to come up and say hello to me. And I remember this one year, I was standing there, and there was a line of young people saying thank you, sharing stories with me. Hey, I did that once, relatable stuff, which is always fun. And I remember getting to the end, and I could see this girl who was kind of at the end of the line, a little off of the line, not too close. And we were getting to her turn, and her head was down. And I realized that she was crying. I saw the tears hitting the tops of her shoes. And I remember standing there looking at her, and I said, "Hi, I'm Jen." And she slowly picked her head up and looked at me, and she said, "I'm Annie." And I just wanted to, normally I would never come up front, but I just wanted to say today, thank you. I think this is the first time I have ever felt seen.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, I drove home that day and I was like, okay, we have some work to do here. Because that moment for me was a turning point. It was, not just these young people, but I mean, I have heard those same words in corporate settings at the end of an event where I have people come up and hug, "Can I give you a hug?" with tears and saying, it was so simple. And yet, thank you for bringing some of that stuff to life for us, because we're not getting it right now.
Yeah.
There's so much hatred and vitriol and some of the things that we don't think about when we're talking about other human beings.
Yeah.
And we need to focus on getting it right.
Yeah.
And even when we fail, we still have to focus on getting it right. And so it's amazing to me that that moment was such a trigger, and it was such this has to be at the forefront of everything I do here on out, because this is how we save people. These
Yeah.
conversations are what help people feel seen and validated and worthy. And I mean, isn't that what we all want? But we're not getting it.
Yeah.
We're not getting it. We're certainly not getting it in the workplace often. So, again, I think that's why for me, this is a hill I'm willing to die on. This is a passion of, we need to do this work, and we need to do it intentionally, and we need to do it together.
Yeah. And what's great is that, or not great, I suppose, but one of the other questions we have is, why does the world need it now? And to be fair, I don't know that it's just now, right? We, like you talked about, it's been a while. It's been a long while. Certainly there are events and things that have happened over the past few years that have really brought this even more to light, that this kind of work, this kind of leadership is needed now. It was needed yesterday, and it's definitely needed now. But can you kind of talk on what it is that, why is it that this is the answer now,
Mhm.
that we need to see and be living out loud?
So I think, number one, there's so much research, right? It's almost like we didn't have to do the hard work. The hard work was already done for us. There's so much research that tells us that when we really humanize people, when we really allow them to be who they are, show up fully in all their stuff, right? When we allow that to happen, we see the result of happier people.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if we're talking bottom line, I know there's a lot of companies, even that we work with, that are very driven by numbers and by the necessity to, drive revenue. Of course, businesses can't survive without that. However, I would say if you focus on the process, 9 times out of 10, the outcome takes care of itself. And that is a psychological, understanding. So, there's research. It proves it, that higher engagement scores, higher retention, lower turnover, all of those things happen when people are actually happy where they are, where they work, right? And we spend more of our waking time at work usually than anywhere else.
Yep.
That's one. The second one, real quick, and I just want to share this because this really, if there was somebody who could come along and solidify this, it just happened for me. I'm reading this book, Seth Godin, The Song of Significance. Okay, fantastic. Love his stuff. But I was reading this morning actually, and there's a section in the book that is entitled "Real Skills Are a Way Forward." And he writes this: when an employee demoralizes the entire team by undermining a project, or when a team member checks out and doesn't pull his weight, or when a bully causes future stars to quit the organization, too often we shrug and point out that this person has tenure or key vocational skills, or really isn't so bad. Okay, hold that thought for a second. Then he goes on to say this. He talks about vocational skills can be taught. You're not born knowing engineering or copywriting or even graphic design. Therefore, they must be something we can teach. But we let ourselves off the hook when it comes to decision making, eager participation, dancing with fear, speaking with authority, working in teams, seeing the truth, speaking the truth, inspiring others, doing more than we're asked, caring, and being willing to change things. We underinvest in this training, fearful that these things are innate and can't be taught. Perhaps they're talents, and so we downplay them, calling them soft skills. You know how much I hate that. Making it easy for us to move on to something seemingly more urgent. At scale, organizations pay less attention to soft skills when hiring because we've persuaded ourselves that vocational skills are impersonal and easier to measure. If it's easier to test for, it seems more important when selecting our team. And we fire slowly and retrain rarely when these skills are missing because we're worried about stepping on toes, being called out for getting personal, or possibly wasting time on a lost cause. But these skills can all be learned, as obvious skills like chess or typing can be learned. We learn them accidentally. by osmosis, by the collisions we have with teachers, parents, bosses, and the world. Even though they're more difficult to measure, that doesn't mean we can't improve them, can't practice them, or can't change the way we do our work. Of course we can. Let's stop calling them soft. They're interpersonal skills, leadership skills, the skills of charisma and diligence and contribution. But these modifiers, while accurate, somehow edge them away from the vocational skills, the skills that we actually hire for, the skills we measure a graduate degree on. So let's uncomfortably call them real skills instead. Real because they work, because they're at the heart of what we need today. Real because even if you've got the vocational skills, you're no help to us without these human skills, the things that we can't write down or program a computer to do. Real skills can't replace vocational skills, of course. What they can do is amplify the things you've already been measuring. Imagine a team member with all the traditional vocational skills, productive, skilled, experienced, a resume that can prove it. That's a fine baseline. Now, add to it. Perceptive, charismatic, driven, focused, goal-setting, inspiring, and motivated. Generous, empathetic, and consistent. A deep listener with patience. What happens to your organization when someone like that joins your team? Bam.
I would say you should mic drop on that, but I think it'll really ruin the audio.
Well, I dropped the book. How about that?
That was great.
So I was reading that this morning, and that's why, sorry to take that long to read that, but I thought it was, you know what? If I just came on here and read that, I mean, that right there, to me, proves all of it. Spot on, 100% right. And truthfully, I think something we need to really reconsider in our hiring process, in our engagement process, in our training process. From here on out, we stop calling them soft skills because they're not. I've always said these are no longer soft skills. These are essential skills, right? And yeah. They are. And I think they're more important today than ever. Yeah. And thank you, Seth, for backing that up.
And we are not getting paid.
No.
At least not yet.
Right. No, I literally just was reading it this morning and said, I'm just going to share this because it's too powerful not to.
Yeah. That's incredible. And yes, I mean, a constant conversation between two of us on what that means and what that looks like. And even then with the term soft, what's wrong with being soft?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
But that's a whole other conversation. So
it's funny. And I just have to mention this. I've heard this from a few companies that I have worked with over the years saying that, we need to move this person over here to this job to soften them up. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fascinating. And what is it? Like, what does that really mean to you? What are you trying to do? Because the idea that one correlates to the other is strange. And I think there's a much better way to do this. Let's train this across the board.
Yeah, correct. Oh, that's incredible. So yeah, I mean, so we have a couple more questions. Just want to make sure we can get you through this. But I mean, that's so incredibly powerful and definitely a lot of food for thought. And hopefully if anyone, wants to contribute to the conversation with there, please definitely reach out to us. But this is something we are extremely passionate and talk about all the time. So, for what we're doing here with B.R.A.V.E. Human Leadership, with Jalen Consulting, what does the future look like right now? What are some of the things on the horizon for, I mean, obviously I know, but that we're sort of moving into and want to share with the world?
Well, I'm going to just kind of give an overall, and then if you don't mind, I would love for you to just kind of tap into some of those things and just let people know kind of really what we're working on here. But from my viewpoint, more of this, more of connecting with people, more of the opportunity to build these, stronger cultures of humanness, to build these leaders who can help sustain that. to help support the people that show up every day and, are afraid to show up every day, or are worried about, 10,000 other things while they're sitting at their job, hoping that they can, get home to their sick child or their parent or whatever's happening for them, that they're seen.
Yeah.
And that they're recognized, that you don't just walk into somewhere and become someone else, that you are a whole person. And we want to develop programming and opportunities to help people to build these skills that we're talking about. So I don't know if you want to share a couple of those things.
Yeah, I mean, for some of that definitely is, we're looking at we do work with obviously organizations, and there's a lot of impact that happens within that, because we get to look at the different structures of culture and what that really means. That we talk about it as an iceberg, right? So there are behaviors that exist, but then there's also the pieces under that. How are decisions made? What are the conversations that are happening? How is communication working within the organization? And those are pieces we really start looking at to understand how this B.R.A.V.E piece actually does start to get implemented, and how we can start moving the needle on things to make real change happen. The other side of that, and some of the things that we're working on for one end of year, but also for 2024 and beyond, is creating accessibility for people that might not necessarily be able to have that come into their organizations, right? We still want, for those leaders who are interested and wanting to learn more and come into a group and community of practitioners of this kind of work, we have some options and courses and different things like that that are now accessible. And we wanted to make it more accessible to everyone who sees and knows the value. And we want people who are really willing to and able to make the changes that they know are essential to getting these things to work and really changing the world that we live in and the way that we lead. So, obviously, if you're interested or want to know more, definitely reach out to us. But yeah, it's really creating the opportunity for anybody to be involved and to be able to learn this, especially around others who are doing that same work. So, hopefully that.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. It excites me every time we talk about it. Just some of the things that are coming up. I can't wait to share with everyone.
Yeah. And then, so as we part, do you have any one thing or words of wisdom or anything like that you hope, if people can only make it for this last minute, what is something that you hope that they can walk away with today?
Take a deep breath. Hit pause for 1 second. And go to that space to identify, what are you grateful for today? What's the thing that's resonating right now? If you just joined us and you're just here for this, like Eileen said, this last minute, let it be a minute for you to take a breath for you and to look at, where am I? And to be grateful for being there. To find whatever it is, even if it's one small little thing that makes your feet hit the ground every morning. What is that thing? And focus on that. And hopefully you will bring that light with you into the world as you, after this minute, go back to whatever you were doing. I think that's how we all get brighter and we all get better. That's what was on my heart just now. So that's where we are.
So good. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, for those who would also like to share their stories and where they are and what they're sharing with the world, we invite you to reach out and let us know, and we'll help prep you for sharing your brave story. And just want to wish everyone a great Thursday. And thank you so much for being here with us. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
See you soon. Take care.